We're now going to transition from design and turn our attention to culture. Organizational culture is distinct from organizational design, though the two are interconnected. While design focuses on tangible aspects such as hierarchy and structure, culture dives into the intangibles, the shared beliefs, norms, and values that permeate the organization. It can be described as the vibe or ethos that characterizes an organization. There are numerous perspectives on organizational culture, with countless articles and definitions trying to encapsulate its essence. Your textbook defines culture as the shared, taken for granted assumptions that members of an organization have and which affect the way they act, think, and perceive the environment. So culture is about the shared beliefs or assumptions that dictate why organizations prioritize certain objectives over others. It's the unwritten rules or the idea of the way things are done around here. Some scholars view culture as collective knowledge, reflecting how the organization has learned to exist, the methods through which problems are solved, decisions are made, or motivation is kindled. This understanding emphasizes that while culture might be influenced by founders or stated corporate values, it also emerges organically from employees' interactions, interpretations, and shared experiences. It's a fusion of top-down directives and bottom-up contributions from individual employees. Why is organizational culture, with all its intangibilities, so critical? It's because organizational culture shapes employee behaviors and, in turn, the overall direction of a company, either propelling it towards success or dragging it down. Take Apple, for instance. Its organizational culture has often been lauded for fostering an exceptional customer service experience. When you visit an Apple store and interact with employees at the Genius Bar, the ambience and service level exemplify Apple's culture. The company leverages this culture to distinguish itself, recognizing the importance of excellent customer service in its overall brand identity. Conversely, there are cautionary tales. A misaligned culture can lead to detrimental results. An example is the Volkswagen emissions scandal in 2015. Prior to this, there was a perception among Volkswagen employees that the company valued passing the emissions tests more than genuinely producing environmentally friendly vehicles, which led them to manipulate the emissions testing results to make their cars appear more environmentally friendly than they actually were. This culture led to significant reputational damage and financial penalties. We also know from research on the competing values model, which you can read more about in your textbook, that certain types of cultures lead to better organizational performance. For example, organizations that have a market or adhocracy culture, where there's an external focus on competition and innovation respectively, have been shown to perform better. On the other hand, organizations that have a clan culture, where there's an internal focus promoting a family-like and collaborative environment, tend to have higher levels of employee satisfaction. So organizational culture matters. It can encourage employees to go the extra mile or, conversely, make ethically questionable decisions. The functional approach helps us understand more specifically how organizational culture influences behavior and organizational performance. According to this approach, the function of an organization's culture can be broken down into 5 key roles. The first is that it defines boundaries. Culture differentiates one organization from another, making it clear what it means to be a part of a specific company. It also provides a sense of identity. Organizational culture gives employees a sense of belonging and identity within the company. It enhances commitment. A strong culture can foster a sense of loyalty and commitment towards the organization among its members. And it clarifies behavior standards. Culture helps to establish and reinforce the expected standards of behavior, defining what is acceptable and unacceptable in the workplace. And finally, it shapes attitudes. Culture influences the attitudes and mindsets of employees, shaping how they think and act within the environment. One widely accepted model for understanding organizational culture is Schien's Iceberg model. This model posits that culture has 3 main layers: artifacts, values, and assumptions. Artifacts are the physical and behavioral symbols of an organization's culture. For example, at a tech startup company, you might observe artifacts like casual dress codes, open office layouts, playful decorations, or hackathons. These observable elements may suggest a culture that values collaboration, innovation, and informality. You can think of this first layer as the tip of the iceberg, the things that are easy to see. The second layer is the values. These are the beliefs and objectives shared by the organization and its members. For example, a company like Patagonia, known for its commitment to environmental sustainability, might have explicit values such as build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, and use business to protect nature. These values can often be found in mission statements, codes of ethics, or corporate social responsibility reports, and are evident in company decisions and policies. These things are sometimes a little less visible if you don't know where to look. And the third layer is the assumptions. These are deeply embedded, often unconscious beliefs that guide behavior within an organization. For example, at Netflix, there is a deeply ingrained assumption that responsibility should be given to employees to do their best work. This leads to practices like unlimited vacation days and a lack of rigid hierarchy. These assumptions are often so taken for granted that they might not be consciously recognized by employees unless they're asked to compare their organization with others. They're the bottom of the iceberg, deep under the surface, but that still have a big effect on how the organization operates. According to Schien's model, organizational culture is not just imposed on employees, but rather it's something that they learn and internalize over time through a variety of mechanisms. And these mechanisms include 1. Myths and stories. These are narratives shared within the company that embody its values and ethos. For example, at a tech startup, a story might circulate about the company's founder coding nonstop for 72 hours to meet an important deadline. This story serves to underscore the company's value of determination and commitment to their mission. Another mechanism is the company's rituals. Regular, repeated activities within an organization can solidify and communicate its core values. For instance, a consulting firm might hold weekly all-hands meetings where employees share their wins of the week. These rituals not only build team unity, but also reinforce a culture of celebrating achievements and focusing on results. Another mechanism is symbols and artifacts. Visible signs of the company's culture, such as the logo, office layout, employee attire, or name badges, help illustrate what the company values. For example, a company that encourages a casual and relaxed work environment might adopt an open office layout and allow employees to dress casually, emphasizing its value of openness and comfort. And there's also language. Unique terminology, acronyms, or jargon used within an organization can foster a sense of belonging among its employees. For instance, a healthcare organization might consistently use patient-first language, reinforcing a culture centered around patient care and empathy. Through these mechanisms, employees decipher, learn, and internalize the foundational beliefs, values, and assumptions that define an organization's culture. And this, in turn, shapes how employees behave and the decisions they make. Let's dive a little deeper into how these elements of organizational culture come together and sustain themselves. There are several key elements at play here. First, we've got leadership. If you think about it, the leaders of an organization are like the conductors of the orchestra. They're setting the rhythm and the tone, and they're guiding the group. If our CEO, for example, consistently champions transparency and open communication, that's going to permeate through the entire company. You'll start to see this culture of openness being adopted by everyone else. It's like a domino effect. Selection is the next piece of the puzzle. When we're hiring, we're not just looking at the skills that people bring to the table, but also how they vibe with the ethos of the organization. This is often known as values fit. Let's say we're a nonprofit focused on environmental sustainability. If a candidate comes in with a track record of supporting green initiatives, they might be a better fit for us compared to someone else who's indifferent towards the cause. And then there's socialization or onboarding. This is more than just training someone for their role. It's like introducing a new player into a sports team. They need to understand the rules, the strategies, yes, but they also need to understand the team spirit, the culture. A comprehensive onboarding program might involve mentorship, team building activities, and even cultural orientation. It's all about getting the new players to understand the game. And lastly, we have the reward systems. Rewards can be powerful motivators, and they can be used strategically to reinforce what's important to the organization. Suppose a company values innovative thinking. If they put in place a system that recognizes and rewards novel ideas, you're creating an environment that encourages creativity. It's like saying to your employees, we value innovation and we want to see more of it. The attraction, selection, attrition model, or the ASA model, ties these concepts together. What this model tells us is that culture forms as we attract individuals who resonate with our company values. We then select the best among these individuals who align well with us, and those who don't really fit in, they tend to move on. For instance, a highly paced tech startup might naturally attract and retain individuals who thrive in fast-paced, innovative environments, and see those who prefer a slower pace move on. So all these mechanisms, they work together, they intertwine, and they shape the culture of an organization. They're the forces that help create and sustain what's underneath that iceberg in Schien's model. Let's look at this from another angle, through the lens of Hatch's dynamic model of cultural formation. Hatch describes this as a kind of recursive, ongoing process where artifacts, be they physical objects, branding elements, or even the uniforms employees wear, take on symbolic value. These symbols then guide our interpretations and assumptions about the organization, which in turn shape its values and norms. It's a self-reinforcing cycle, and what's particularly useful about this model is that it suggests potential points of intervention if we want to change an organization's cultural. So can organizational culture actually be changed? Well, the answer is yes, but with a caveat. It's not easy. More often than not, culture change demands significant restructuring efforts and modifications in HR systems and processes. We're talking about changes in the organizational chart, potential layoffs, alteration of recruitment and selection processes to align with new values, and possibly rebranding as well. The goal here is to ensure the best possible alignment between what you're offering, your product or your service, and your business strategy, organizational design, and culture. Here's a hypothetical example. Suppose we want to create a more customer-friendly culture in a company. Initially, we might start by altering certain artifacts. Our first steps might involve changes at the structural level of the organization. We would aim to move away from rigid, rule-bound processes towards a more flexible structure that empowers employees. By granting them more decision-making power, employees would feel the freedom to personalize customer service and go the extra mile to please customers, within reasonable constraints, of course. For instance, they might be enabled to adjust prices or offer custom solutions, as long as it doesn't result in losses. These structural changes are the initial artifacts signaling the start of our culture shift. The next stage of our culture transformation might involve tangible changes in our recruitment and training processes. We adjust our hiring criteria to prioritize candidates who display personalities, attitudes, or values that align with a strong service orientation. We implement new training for both new hires and existing employees, focused on enhancing customer service skills and commitment. These are the symbols of our commitment to customer service, the visible indicators that signal the direction in which the organization's culture is shifting. These changes in symbols lead to the formation of new assumptions about what is important within the organization. When we visibly prioritize customer service in our hiring and training practices, it sends a clear message to all members of the organization. They start to internalize the belief that customer service is not just a concept, but an essential part of their daily operations and strategic decision-making. This alignment between what we say, the symbols, and what we do, the actions, creates a strong foundation for these new assumptions to take hold. In terms of values, on the executive level, leadership would actively communicate a more customer-centric vision for the organization. They would also reinforce the need for policies and procedures that genuinely serve customers. These actions contribute to forming new values centered on customer service. Finally, we reinforce these values by incorporating customer service elements into performance appraisals, recognizing employees who demonstrate exceptional efforts in customer satisfaction. These tangible recognitions serve as the new artifacts, symbolizing the company's dedication to its customer-first values. The above steps should create a positive feedback loop, reflecting Hatch's dynamic model of cultural change. By continually reinforcing these changes and adjustments, we foster an environment that progressively deepens the customer service culture within the organization. Let's consider another example. Suppose an organization wants to shift towards a more ethical culture. Again, they'd start with the artifacts. To foster a more ethical culture, we would start by creating and implementing visible changes in our organization. This might include developing a clear code of conduct that outlines the ethical expectations for everyone in the organization. It might also include setting up protective mechanisms to maintain ethical standards, such as a confidential reporting system where employees can report issues without fear of reprisal. In addition, we could establish a recognition system, such as special awards for outstanding ethical behavior. These tangible changes constitute the artifacts in our transformation process, signaling our commitment to ethical conduct. The symbols in this transformation might include the actions of top management, their communication about ethics, and the rewards given for ethical behavior. By providing executive coaching for top management, we ensure that our leaders can effectively role model ethical behavior and communicate our vision for an ethical culture. The symbols would also include the reward system for ethical behavior. When we reward ethical behavior, we're indicating that this is not just an expectation, but a valued behavior. These artifacts and symbols work together to shape new assumptions about what's important within our organization. When the code of conduct is enforced, when leaders model ethical behavior, and when ethical actions are rewarded, it sends a clear message to all employees. They start to internalize the belief that ethical conduct is not just expected, but highly valued. They assume that ethical behavior is the norm and that it will be consistently upheld. Finally, these changes in artifacts, symbols, and assumptions manifest in a shift in our organization's values. We begin to value not just outcomes, but also the process of how we achieve those outcomes. We place a greater emphasis on making ethical decisions, even if it means taking a risk or not choosing the easiest path. We value transparency and accountability, promoting a culture where everyone is encouraged to do the right thing. And in turn, new practices are developed that serve as additional artifacts, and the cycle continues. While culture can be a powerful asset, it's important to understand that the same strong, entrenched culture that can drive performance and set a company apart, like Apple's for instance, can also become a liability under certain circumstances. For one, culture can be an impediment to change. The cultural content of an organization, if misaligned with the needs of the competitive landscape, can hinder its adaptability. For instance, a company that has fostered a culture centered around customer service might find it hard to pivot towards a cost minimization strategy when market conditions change. Employees' deeply ingrained beliefs about the importance of customer service could be incompatible with a shift towards efficiency and standardization, making it difficult for the organization to adapt. Similarly, a strong culture can also pose challenges in the context of mergers and acquisitions. Prospective partners may see the firm's deeply ingrained culture as inflexible or incompatible with their own, making them hesitate to proceed with a merger or acquisition. In such cases, the culture, which may have previously been a strength, can become an obstacle to strategic corporate decisions. Lastly, a strong organizational culture could be a barrier to diversity. For example, a high-performance competitive culture may not be inclusive to individuals who can't maintain constant availability or high levels of workload. This could potentially exclude employees with personal responsibilities such as childcare, thus limiting the scope for diverse talent within the organization. So while a strong organizational culture can be a driver of success, it's crucial to periodically evaluate its alignment with the company's strategic goals, market requirements, and commitments to diversity and inclusion. If misaligned, what was once an asset can quickly become a liability.